Behind China's rapid modernization, a hidden crisis persists, one that is rarely discussed openly, yet affects countless lives in both cities and the countryside. It is the trafficking of women and girls, who are bought and sold as if they were mere commodities, their futures traded away in secret deals. This is not a relic of the past, but a contemporary tragedy unfolding every day in remote villages and the hidden corners of bustling cities. Viral videos and shocking news reports have exposed women chained in sheds, children sold by their own parents, and brides trafficked across borders, stories that have sparked outrage and heartbreak across the nation. The roots of this trade are tangled in poverty, deeply held traditions, and a severe gender imbalance that has left millions of men without partners. For many families, selling a woman or girl becomes a desperate response to crushing economic hardship or overwhelming social pressure, with few alternatives in sight. Victims lose their freedom, their names, and their futures, forced into unwanted marriages, grueling labor, and even childbirth against their will. Economic progress has not erased these deep-seated social ills. In some ways, the spread of technology and modernity has made exploitation easier, connecting traffickers to vulnerable victims faster than ever before. In this chapter, we'll explore the real stories behind this trade, from the infamous chained woman whose plight shocked the world to the growing impact of technology on trafficking networks. We'll also examine the government's response, the challenges of enforcement, and the tireless grassroots fight for change led by activists and volunteers. The urgency is real. Every day, more women and girls are at risk, their lives hanging in the balance as society struggles to confront this crisis. By shining a light on these stories, we can begin to understand the true cost of this hidden trade, and perhaps find the path to meaningful change. This is a journey into the shadows of a global superpower, where the fight for dignity, freedom, and justice continues, one story at a time. To truly understand why women are sold in modern China, we must examine the complex intersection of poverty, government policy, and deep-rooted cultural preference. These forces have shaped the lives of millions, often with tragic consequences. In many rural areas, crushing poverty leaves families with few options. Faced with hunger and desperation, some are forced into making unthinkable choices, sometimes even selling their daughters just to survive another day. The lack of economic opportunity and social support only deepens this crisis. China's one-child policy, enforced for decades, combined with a long-standing preference for sons, led to widespread sex-selective abortions and a staggering gender imbalance. Families, pressured by tradition and law, often felt compelled to ensure their only child was a boy. Today, the result is clear. There are millions more men than women, especially in rural regions. This imbalance has created a desperate demand for brides, leaving many men unable to find partners and fueling social instability. Traffickers exploit this gap, abducting women from poorer provinces or neighboring countries and selling them into forced marriages. These women are often lured with false promises or taken by force, then trapped in unfamiliar places with no way out. From birth, girls are often devalued, seen as burdens rather than blessings. This makes them especially vulnerable to trafficking and abuse, perpetuating a cycle of neglect and exploitation. The legacy of the one-child policy will haunt China for decades to come. The shortage of women continues to drive this brutal trade, while aging parents and isolated men face uncertain futures in emptying villages. Addressing this crisis requires more than just law enforcement. It demands a fundamental cultural shift in how women and girls are valued, both in families and in society at large. Education and advocacy are crucial steps toward lasting change. The roots of these issues run deep, but real change must begin with challenging and transforming these old beliefs, so that future generations of girls can grow up safe, valued, and free. In early 2022, a disturbing video swept across Chinese social media, shocking millions. It showed a woman, Xiao Huamei, chained by the neck in a freezing, dilapidated shed. The images were haunting, her eyes hollow, her body shivering in the bitter cold of a rural village winter. Xiao Huamei was a mother of 8 children, her life and freedom stolen by human traffickers. She had been forced into a life of unimaginable hardship, isolated from the world and denied even the most basic dignity. Local authorities initially tried to downplay her plight, issuing vague statements and attempting to silence discussion. But public outrage exploded online, as people demanded answers and justice. Brave citizen journalists and activists began to investigate. They uncovered the truth. Xiao Huamei had been trafficked from Yunnan province, sold multiple times, and held captive for years, her suffering hidden in plain sight. Her case exposed not only the cruelty of her captors, but also the complicity and silence of local officials and neighbors, who ignored her suffering, turning a blind eye for years. Under mounting public pressure, authorities were finally forced to act. They launched an official investigation, arresting her husband and several others involved in her captivity and abuse. Xiao Huamei's ordeal became a powerful symbol of systemic failure and the horrors of human trafficking in modern China, sparking a wave of activism and debate. Her story forced a national reckoning, raising urgent questions about law enforcement, government accountability, and society's moral responsibility to protect the vulnerable. The public outcry was unprecedented, showing that ordinary people would no longer remain silent in the face of such injustice. Xiao Huamei's tragedy sparked hope for real change, pressuring the government to take human trafficking seriously and inspiring new calls for reform. Her story is a stark reminder. These crimes are not distant history. They are happening now, in communities across China and beyond. Only by confronting these injustices together can real change begin, and only then can we hope to prevent more tragedies like Xiao Huamei's. The trade in human lives extends to children, driven by poverty and the preference for sons. In 2025, a mother in Guangxi sold her 2 sons for cash, spending the money on luxury goods and online entertainment. Her own history of neglect and lack of opportunity fueled a cycle of trauma and desperation. Buyers, desperate for sons, see these transactions as unofficial adoptions, ignoring the crime and the pain inflicted. Authorities rescued the boys, but their futures remain uncertain. This case reveals how poverty, cultural pressure, and the lure of consumerism can lead to unthinkable acts. Sometimes, the perpetrator is also a victim, caught in a web of hardship and broken values. The trade in children is a grim reflection of a society struggling with old traditions and new temptations. Technology has transformed human trafficking in China. Traffickers use social media and messaging apps to lure victims with fake job offers, then abduct and sell them. Online forums and encrypted chats allow buyers to browse and negotiate for women and children with anonymity. Digital payments and cryptocurrencies make it harder to trace these crimes. Technology is also used to control victims. Phones are confiscated, and threats of online humiliation keep them silent. Yet, technology can also be a force for good. The chained woman's case went viral because of social media, forcing authorities to act. Activists and journalists use digital tools to raise awareness and track missing persons. The fight against trafficking is now waged online, where the same tools that enslave can also liberate. The digital battlefield is shaping the future of this struggle. The sale of a human being devastates more than just the victim. Women endure unimaginable abuse, stripped of autonomy and hope, often suffering lifelong trauma. Families left behind are haunted by loss and uncertainty, powerless to find or help their loved ones. Children born from forced unions grow up in dysfunctional, abusive environments, perpetuating cycles of violence. Legal and social barriers leave these children marginalized from birth. On a societal level, trafficking erodes trust, normalizes the commodification of women, and undermines the rule of law. When communities ignore these crimes, collective moral responsibility breaks down. The nation's reputation suffers, and the cost is paid by generations. The trauma ripples outward, poisoning families and corroding society's foundation. The true cost of trafficking is incalculable. Healing must begin with acknowledging the depth of this damage. In response to public outrage, the Chinese government launched Operation Thunderbolt to combat trafficking. Raids, arrests, and tougher laws followed, targeting both traffickers and buyers. The chained woman's captors and the mother who sold her sons were prosecuted. Legal reforms now impose harsher penalties, signaling that buying a person is a serious crime. Technology aids the fight. DNA databases and the Tuanyuan platform help reunite families and find missing children. Despite progress, challenges remain. Enforcement is inconsistent, and local officials sometimes turn a blind eye. Corruption and cultural attitudes still hinder real change. Experts agree. True progress requires more than crackdowns. It demands addressing poverty, gender inequality, and demand. The government's efforts are a start, but the roots of the crisis run deep. Sustained, systemic change is essential. Beyond government action, grassroots activists are leading the fight against trafficking. Journalists, lawyers, and volunteers risk their safety to rescue victims and demand justice. Figures like Deng Fei use social media to mobilize thousands, crowdsource searches, and pressure authorities. Grassroots groups provide hotlines, legal aid, and long-term support for survivors, services often lacking from official channels. Digital activism has become a powerful force, keeping stories like Xiao Huamei's alive and pushing women's rights into the spotlight. Online communities offer solidarity and shift public opinion, even under censorship and harassment. Activists face real dangers, but their commitment is unwavering. They are the voices for the voiceless, challenging silence and complicity. Their resilience proves that civil society can drive change, even in the face of adversity. The fight for dignity and freedom is being waged from the ground up. Ending human trafficking in China is daunting, but not impossible. The first step is challenging the cultural preference for sons through education and media, promoting the value of girls. Economic empowerment for women in rural areas is crucial. When women have choices, they are less vulnerable. Strengthening social safety nets can prevent families from resorting to desperate measures. Laws must be enforced consistently, with no tolerance for buying or selling people. Police and officials need training to recognize and respond to trafficking compassionately. Survivors require long-term support, shelter, healthcare, and legal aid to rebuild their lives. The growing public outcry and activism show that change is possible. Collective action, education, and empowerment can break the cycle. A future without chains is within reach, if society refuses to look away.